Martin have worked side by side, running a shed building firm in Preston.
When me and John first took it over, we were both quite young. I think I was 21 at the time, 22. I had no responsibilities. You felt good, you felt strong about yourself.
Well, when it was offered to us, there was no thought about it. It was definitely we was going to do it, but we're just a small business that cracks on and do what we have to do.
And the brothers have made sure that their family business plays its part in the local community.
We help out what we can. Local football teams, we sponsored them. We help charities when we can.
This business, it means the world to me. It's something that makes you get up in the morning. I'd never give it up. I'll still be doing this when I'm 60 odd.
On the last weekend in February, the brothers locked up the shop as usual.
Just like any other normal Saturday, you lock up on a Saturday and don't expect to come back till Monday and then start working.
But in the early hours of Monday morning, the workshop was targeted by two men. First, they tried the front gates.
One's gone to climb over the gate, but we've just had it all greased up. They've jumped back down, seen all the grease on their hands, and then decided to walk around the side of the building.
The men headed around the back. They managed to scale the wall, dodging the barbed wire, and entered the yard.
There's nothing worth breaking in for. Was they breaking in for what they thought was going to be a big haul out of a £1 charity cash box?
But the pair had more wanton destruction on their minds. As the arsonists made their escape, the fire spread rapidly. Within minutes, John and Craig's business was in flames. The fire brigade arrived at around 20 to 3 and battled through the night to bring the blaze under control. But the brothers didn't hear the devastating news until the following morning.
Just thought maybe a fire. Someone's tried starting a fire, it's been lit, gone out. You're never thinking of how bad it could be.
And then to see fire brigade and police here, and then to look at the extent of what's happened, you just looked at it and thought, what has happened here?
The blaze was so intense that West Coast Main Railway line, which runs above the premises, had to be closed for several hours.
I couldn't put into words how I feel when I got here. You know, just numb, didn't know what to say, didn't know what to think. There was no feeling at all, no anger, just numb. Everything was in there. It did a lot of damage.
And I had pictures in there that my little boy had done when he first started nursery. And I had a picture on my desk of my two children as well. And that, if I'm honest with you, that hurt more.
Since the attack, the community has rallied around to support the two brothers.
The local radio station, they does a free advert. Our wood company who delivers our wood, give us a bit of grace on the timber.
We've had a lot of people come in, help us out. We've had businesses, we've had friends and family help us out to get back where we are now.
But Craig and John fear that the arsonists may live locally too.
They've definitely been here before. Somebody around here has to know who they are.
And to see what you've worked for, it was just, it's heart-wrenching really, to think that someone's come in and actually done that. For what reason, we do not know.
Just devastating for John and Craig there, and PC Ollie Nevin from Lancashire Constabulary joins me now. Ollie, this fire caused a lot of damage, didn't it?
Yeah, it's caused thousands of pounds worth of damage to a local family run business, which obviously caused great distress to the owners. It also caused major disruption to a national rail line that runs close to the property. The fire took 2 hours for Lancashire Fire and Rescue to put out.
Gosh, that's a long time, and obviously we can see the offenders quite clearly on CCTV, so talk us through it.
Yeah, even though the incident happened at night, we clearly see from CCTV 2 offenders walking away from the scene in the early hours of Monday, the 26th of February. We obviously need to identify who these persons are and urge anyone with any information to pick up the phone.
Now, the brothers said in the film there that they just don't understand why they were targeted.
Yeah, at this stage, the motive for the attack is unclear. However, we do believe it may have been a targeted attack. We see the 2 offenders try 2 different ways inside of the property. The motive may have been to steal items, as a money box was taken from inside the property. But from CCTV, we do see one of the offenders jumps back over the fence. A short while later, the premises starts to go up in flames. There's a chance that these offenders have talked about or bragged about the incident since the attack. So we urge anyone with any information as to the identity of those responsible for this attack to contact us.
Yeah, and John and Craig said as well, didn't they, that this has been heart-wrenching for them. It's clearly affected them. How are they doing now?
Yeah, it's obviously caused them a great deal of distress. Obviously, financially, it's caused a massive difficulty for them, but also emotionally, as it is a family-run local business, which obviously caused them great distress, and to the people they employ as well, has had a major impact on them.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ollie. We'll pick up again with you later in the programme. Rav, back to you.
Yeah, do take another look at those images. If you can name these reckless arsonists, pick up the phone. The number's on your screen now, and we're waiting to hear from you. Next, do you recognise any more criminals caught on camera in today's CCTV roundup? And just so you know, both of these cases are pretty serious. It's just after midnight at this shop in Wembley. Look out for the guy in blue. He's not buying anything, he's causing trouble. A row begins in the store and things quickly escalate. Police say that he threatened to kill the staff before telling them he'd be back. He wasn't lying, and to the shop assistant's horror, he's holding a machine gun. He doesn't fire it. Instead, he gestures for the employee to come outside and continues to yell at him. Luckily, no one was physically harmed. This aggressive assailant is still roaming the streets of London. Help police put him behind bars. A Friday night at this family-run store in Cheshire. Watch and listen as a man in a Spider-Man mask enters. Carrying a hammer, he heads straight for the till area. You can hear his voice as he begins to make demands.
Come on, back up now, get over there. Get over there now, give me the money now. Come on, give me the money now.
He hits one of the workers over the head with a claw hammer. We've frozen the footage as it's too graphic. The other employee tries to restrain him and also suffers a blow. This heartless attack resulted in an overnight stay in hospital for one of the victims. We know the pictures aren't great, but do you recognise this man's voice or mannerisms? Give us a call now. If any of those faces look familiar, please do get in touch. The number is 08000 468 999. Calls are free from landlines and mobile phones. You can also text us on 63399. Text crime, leave a space and then add your message. Text will be charged at your standard message rate, or send us an email. That's the address there, cwr@bbc.co.uk.
I'm in Darlington at this highly specialised fire training centre where teams from industrial workplaces up and down the country come here to learn the skills that they need to cope with a major incident. Now, joining me is Training Director Dennis Perkins. Dennis, talk me through the scenario that we're about to see.
OK, as you know, fuel is delivered around our industrial sites, process plants through pipes and valves and so on. On this exercise, we're demonstrating a fuel spill at a higher level, going down a ramp and reaching a lower level.
OK, so how do the team go about tackling it?
It's very, very difficult. We use the properties of two extinguishing agents, dry powder and foam. Now, dry powder has the ability to interfere with the chemical reaction of combustion, thereby extinguishing fires very, very quickly. The foam is backed up to make sure that that fire maintains extinction by creating a foam blanket over that fuel.
That is amazing.
They work
so that's
from
what
the
we can see
bottom
now.
all the way up to the top. And you'll see both working in unison.
Yes. I mean, this is, just watching it now, it's very, very different to a normal domestic fire, isn't it?
Yes, because normal domestic fire is very single-dimensional. It's probably wood, plastics, that sort of thing. This is quite dynamic, where the liquid or fuel can spread out over a wider area.
And I can see at the bottom they've used a tray to catch the fuel.
Yeah, we use that in our training scenarios more for safety, because it maintains that amount of fuel. If that tray wasn't there, you would imagine that that fuel was spread over a wider area and therefore increase the size of the fire. In certain conditions, such as rain, the fuel will float on top of the water and the foam floats on top of that, and it will spread over a larger area.
See, and talking about weather conditions, obviously wind must be an issue. It's quite windy today, actually.
Yeah, very windy. So the firefighters, through the tactics and techniques, they'll understand the wind direction and use that to their favour. As you saw, they was approaching from this side rather than the other side, so they can see the fire, and also the media that they're applying is not affected by the wind so much, and it would be applied at the point of extinction.
Really interesting, Dennis. Thanks very much. It's a complex process, isn't it? But it's very good to see. And it's not actually just industrial fires that the team train for here. We've been spending time with airport crews to see how they tackle blazes. There are more than 100,000 flights a day around the globe, with around 13,000 planes in the air at any one time. Fires on planes are rare, but when disaster strikes, airport firefighters must react quickly. And they learn those vital skills here, one of the world's major aviation fire training centres.
We have over 80 countries that come here and train from all over the world. The main reason that they want to come here is the fact that we can do real live hydrocarbon burns and gives that realism.
This is the nearest thing we can give to real-life situations. It's scenarios that they can't really do on their own station, possibly until it really happens.
Today, groups of airport-based firefighters will face two challenging aviation exercises.
This morning we're going to see like a major exercise which is going to have a large engine fire, both sides, from the front and from the rear. Once they've extinguished the external fires, they're going to make entry and retrieve casualties.
They don't know what's going to happen. Each incident that they go to has been pre-planned by us, but they know nothing about.
We may have to adapt our drill as we go through it.
Let's go, everyone.
They're faced with a burning plane on the ground, which has 6 people on board. Every second is vital.
As a rule of thumb, we work to 3 minutes. 2 minutes to get to the incident, and then the further 1 minute to create survivable conditions.
In a real aeroplane fire, dealing with the volume of fuel is the biggest challenge for the firefighters. Much of it is stored in the wings. Once the blaze has been tackled, there's little time to rescue the casualties. Thankfully, all 6 dummies were successfully removed from this aircraft.
All the aims were achieved in good time and in a good manner. Obviously, there'll be learning points, as there is on every exercise, and that's why firefighting crews carry out drills and exercises on a regular basis.
The next challenge is even more complicated. The Red Watch team from Prestwick Airport near Glasgow come here for training 4 times a year.
We've got a full emergency. We've got an inbound Dash 8 aircraft, 27 souls on board. Can confirm that there is a number 2 engine fire.
And the weather today is extremely hot, so in full fire clothing is challenging in its own right, never mind with all the pressures of the job.
Fire service Cromie responding to you.
Their scenario is an aircraft which has caught fire in the sky and has just landed. The team must work quickly to put out the flames and rescue the 27 dummies on board.
When you get on initially, it's a little bit like organised chaos for the first 30 seconds, and then after that you just got to take control of the incident, because we only have 3 minutes from the initial call to produce media and create a survival environment. Could have been a little bit slicker, however, at the end, the objective was met, and that's the end result. That's what counts.
It really does test the command team. It gives them opportunities to make decisions, but also for them and the team to recognise when things are going well and when things are going wrong, to help make the decision-making process more efficient so we make less decision errors.
More than 6,000 firefighters pass through this training centre each year, leaving here with vital skills to help keep our airports safe. Amazing work there, and that's how fire crews tackle a blaze at a larger airport. But in this part of the world, there are a lot of very small rural airfields. They're often used by hobby pilots to make short flights, and they largely go unnoticed. Or so you'd think.
There's many hundreds of airfields in the UK, with the thousands of flights that come in every day. Our job in Border Force is to separate the legitimate from the illegitimate.
4 years ago, a quiet Yorkshire airfield became the focus of a huge drugs investigation. Police discovered a sophisticated international smuggling ring, and it all hinged on a pilot codenamed Biggles.
got family, so you never know what's going to happen.
And family was very much on Sean's mind when he and his colleague Simon became caught up in an unexpected drama on this quiet Bradford street.
It was a sunny day and you just heard screams and...
Yeah. Heard a bit of screaming from far end of the street. Just assumed it was somebody having an argument or something like that. Turned and saw smoke.
You can tell the difference between an attention scream and a scream.
Panic.
Yeah, a scream of panic.
Thick black smoke was pouring from an upstairs window, and the officers knew they had to act quickly.
People in the street pointing at the house and shouting. We were shouting babies. By the time we got down to the house in question, there was a child had climbed out of the upstairs window and stood on the window ledge, ready to jump out because the upstairs of the house were rapidly filling up with smoke. I ran in. Smoke were a bit too much for me the first time though, so I just came back out coughing and spluttering, nearly went to my knees at one point and took a few breaths and decided to go in holding my breath. Thankfully got up there and found a couple of children, came running out with them, one under each arm.
Sean started bringing children down and throwing them to me, one by one.
The smoke was just horrendously thick and black and obviously very toxic. So I went back in, managed to get a window open at on the landing at the back of the house, stuck my head out and got a few more breaths, held my breath again and carried on searching, found another child in one of the bedrooms, came out with that child thinking that was it.
But it wasn't over. Another child was still trapped inside, so Sean risked his life for the 4th time and rescued them from the blazing house.
I could see some confusion. I'm thinking that was it and that there was nobody else in. But then they said that I believe it was the great aunt was still in the house, and sure enough, she was there.
It was only after all 5 family members were safely out of the house that Sean had time to reflect on what had happened.
Without a shadow of a doubt, there'd have been fatalities had they not have got out. I mean, I don't doubt for a moment, had we not been here, somebody else would have gone in, you know, somebody in the street, but as it happens, it were us, wasn't it?
Sean's heroic actions didn't go unnoticed. Last summer, the Police Federation honoured him with the UK's most prestigious Police Bravery Award, presented by the then Home Secretary Amber Rudd. He was even invited to a special reception at Downing Street.
Really, really proud because I wasn't expecting to do anything like that and it was such a surprise as well.
Every award just led to a bigger award and I was so excited and just so proud of him.
As a family man, obviously, every job you go to, there's back of your mind, you're thinking about your family. And if you go to a job that's involving children, there's always the thought that, you know, it just tugs on your heartstrings a little bit being a father.
A really heartwarming story. Next to North Yorkshire, where police want to identify a burglar caught on camera as he raided an elderly man's home.
The quiet village of Upper Appleton in North Yorkshire is home to 82-year-old John Rhodes. 12 years ago, he retired here with his wife Joan.
Getting older, we felt we needed to be near one of our children. And my youngest son and his family were here. My wife and I grew up in Lancashire, near Blackburn. She was my first love, and it was a lifelong love match.
A few years ago, when Joan became unwell, John became her main carer.
Every day was filled with involvement with each other, caring for her.
To help support his parents, the couple's son David installed CCTV cameras in their home.
I wanted to be able to keep an eye on them because my dad was here with her most of the time, caring for her on his own. So it enabled me to check in without phoning the house. If they were having a nap, it meant I didn't wake them up. But also, I could see, you know, if there was a problem or if somebody had fallen over.
In August last year, Joan passed away.
It wasn't a shock in that she'd been ill for quite a while.
We were on each side of her as she breathed her last. And that is a very moving memory that will always stay with me.
Then, in October, just 2 months after Joan's death, John travelled to Stratford-upon-Avon to attend his cousin's funeral.
I was really very low, but managed to get down to the funeral. I was intent on being present for it.
But while he was away, his empty home attracted some unwanted attention. Just hours before John was due to return, a man approached the house. After prowling around the outside, he smashed a kitchen window and was in. Crouched low out of sight, he started to explore, unaware that David's CCTV cameras were recording every step he took. He opened windows, preparing for a quick escape, then searched room after room for valuables. But he was about to get an audience.
It was that evening when I was expecting my dad to be back. I thought, I'll just ring. And there was no reply. So I clicked into the cameras and I just saw someone moving about and thought, oh, well, he is back. So I rang again and there was still no reply. Now, my dad always answers the phone. So it was at that point I thought, okay, hang on a minute, let me go back and look at what's going on. And when I took a closer look, I saw it wasn't my dad, it was somebody else.
David realised he was watching a burglary taking place in real time. Terrified his father was in the house and in danger, he panicked.
I grabbed my son Henry and we grabbed a baseball bat and a hammer. I phoned 999 and ran out the door and jumped in the car.
Hi, someone's burgling my father's house. I've got it on camera. I've got cameras in his house.
You definitely know what's going on now?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, they're en route with blue light.
I felt my adrenaline kick in and we drove here pretty quickly, but I was shaking when I got here.
By the time they arrived at the house, the police were already there and the burglar had made his escape. When John got back an hour later, he found a crime scene.
I was met at the door by my son and grandson, who announced that I'd been burgled.
In a cruel blow, the thief had made off with jewellery belonging to John's late wife.
He not long ago lost his wife, and he'd just come back from his cousin's funeral. You know, I'm not sure he had anything left to react with.
Knowing that somebody has been there and seeing the footage of the person walking about in your home, it's a strange, deep infringement on one's personal space.
Certainly no regard for the person they're burgling, and in this case, a vulnerable person. I personally think it's just despicable.
Really awful for John. I'm joined now by North Yorkshire Police investigator Dave Pegg. Now, Dave, the CCTV in this case is really clear, isn't it? Let's take another look at it now, because surely someone must recognise him.
Yeah, it's without doubt some of the clearest CCTV I've seen in my career. You can see his face on a couple of occasions for several seconds, and also you can see that he's wearing quite distinctive clothing and footwear. And we are considering alternatives, but because of his appearance and the clothing, we believe that the offender may be of Eastern European origin. Sometime after the burglary, John's address was used by an insurance fraudster, and the name used on that insurance was a very common Eastern European name.
OK, and remind us what the burglar got away with.
Yeah, he stole several items of sentimental jewellery, including this necklace that you can see his late wife wearing. Also stolen were a couple of gold pocket watches and a couple of gold chains, one of which was inscribed in his father's name, which was James Rhodes. And he stole a couple of gold necklaces, gold cufflinks, a tie pin and some cash.
And you're thinking that this might be what you're calling a spree of burglaries?
Yeah, it's a spree burglary. It's a term that refers to a spike in a particular type of burglary in a certain area. They tend to visit an area for anything between 7 and 14 days, commit the burglaries, and then move on to a different area. And we've reason to believe this is that type of burglary, as there were 2 or 3 other similar burglaries in the York area in October last year.
Okay.
And I'm convinced that even if the people of North Yorkshire aren't able to identify him, someone somewhere in the UK will.
Well, let's hope so. Dave, thanks very much. Let's take one last look at this image. It's incredibly clear. If you do have any information, make sure you get in contact with us using the numbers on your screen. Raf.
Thanks, Michelle. Surely someone must know him. Now, sporting memorabilia is big business. Some genuine mementos like these that are signed by celebrities can sell for tens of thousands of pounds. But these items can also be a target for thieves. And PC Brendan Middleton-Rees joins me now from Derbyshire Constabulary. And you've got a very special piece of sporting memorabilia that's recently been stolen, and that's what you're investigating. Tell us what that is.
Yes, Rav, we're looking to get information about a pair of Usain Bolt's running shoes from the 2012 London Olympics.
OK, let's have a look on the screen now. This is Usain Bolt actually wearing the running spikes. This is one of the heats from the 2012 Olympics there, and Usain Bolt doing what he does best, just strolling to victory. Now, what he did after this is, we can actually see here, he's signing a pair of running spikes, and he then gives them to a collector, doesn't he?
That's right, yeah. They're part of an extensive collection that the collector's built up over a number of years.
So this is an image of the actual shoes themselves. The collector had them in his home. And how were they actually stolen from there?
They were stolen in a burglary on the 9th of June this year from his home in Linton, South Derbyshire.
OK, and at the time of the theft, they were housed in some sort of glass housing?
That's right, yeah. This item and a number of others were housed in a display case, roughly about 2'6" high by 2 foot wide, quite distinctive.
So that could be something that jogs someone's memory, because
yes, hopefully.
They were given to the collector in this instance, but they're of course worth several £1,000s, and they may well be up for sale at the moment. You know that there are some fakes out there, and you can identify these as being genuine.
That's right, yeah. These are a size 12 shoe, whereas the fakes, if you like...
And you've seen some fakes out there?
Yes, yeah, are different sizes.
OK, so you can confirm that these ones are genuine. If they are up for sale, you want anyone to come up with any information if they've seen them, or, of course, if they know anything about who committed the burglary itself. You just want those people to come forward.
Yes, definitely. Like you said, they are of monetary value. I think a pair recently sold for £12,000.
OK, but it's also the sentimental value, the fact that these happen as well. We need to get them back. Thank you for joining us, Brendan. Very unusual crime, but if you can help, get in touch. Michelle.
This morning I'm in Darlington, which is just a short distance from the North Sea coast, where there are hundreds of UK-owned oil and gas rigs, and many of the people that work there actually come and train here. Joining me again is Dennis Perkins. We've got a lot of training exercises actually going on today, Dennis, and you actually help crews prepare for those emergency situations that might happen at sea. What's going on with this one then?
OK, so remember we talked about pressurised fuel going through pipes and valves and so on. So they're controlled by valves. On this exercise, what we're simulating is damaged valves. So we've got 2 damaged valves. So we're not actually putting the fire out. What we aim to do is control the fire.
OK.
And control the fire in a safe, meaningful way.
Right. So how does that work then?
So what happens is, once we start the exercise, you'll see the valve, simulating valve damage by the big fire that you're going to see in a few moments. Now the teams will open their spray branch to a wide spray to protect themselves. You can feel the heat now.
Really feel it.
Once they open the water, it's less of a heat.
Yes.
It reduces that temperature. They'll move forward in unison till they get to a point of safety where they can cone down the branches, control the fire. If you'll see the fire start to get pushed away by the pressure, one of the team then will step out and they'll close the valves down. So we haven't extinguished the fire, we've actually controlled it through a method of moving forward safely. And then what we'll do, once the valves have been closed, we'll once again go to wide spray and withdraw as a team.
It's really interesting to see because, as you say, this water is being used to almost create a barrier, isn't it? A barrier between the firefighters and, you know, the source, rather than it actually putting it out.
Yeah, exactly.
And the gear that these guys are wearing, as well as the equipment, is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, the personal protective equipment that they've got is actually British and European standard firefighting equipment. Boots, leggings, tunic, flash hood, helmet, gloves, they're all to a particular standard that will protect them from that type of fire.
And what kind of teams then do you actually get coming here to train for these exercises?
They're not always 100% professional firefighters.
Yeah.
They form part of what we call an emergency response team. Now that emergency response team could be made up of electricians, plumbers, carpenters, whatever, and they'll respond locally to an incident on site and just hold the fire back while local authority has a chance to get there, and then they'll support local authority as they arrive. And offshore, there's no local authority and they have to deal with it themselves.
Dennis, thanks so much. It's really good to see it up close, and these guys, I tell you what, they can really handle the heat rough.
They certainly can. Thanks, Michelle. Now it's time for a look at today's wanted faces. First is Abdi Abdi. Detectives want to question him about the attempted murder last year of a man in the Stetchford area of Birmingham. The 22-year-old is originally from Somalia but now has links to Birmingham. He's described as dangerous, so if you do see him, don't approach him. Just dial 999. Next is Joseph Gallagher. He was due in court in Manchester in connection with theft and robbery charges, but he didn't turn up, and a warrant is now out for his arrest. He's 19 and has friends and family across Manchester, in particular to the Gorton and Harperey areas. Police believe he may be using a silver moped to get around. Our third face today is 49-year-old Craig Smith. Detectives want to question him in connection to firearms and threats to kill offences in Leeds. He's 5'10", of heavy build and has friends across North and West Yorkshire, as well as Cumbria, Lancashire and Humberside. And finally, we have 47-year-old Stanley Okpara. He was jailed for 7 years for importing drugs into the UK and later released on licence, but he's breached the terms of his release and is now wanted back in jail. He's 6 foot tall and may be using a wheelchair. Originally from Sierra Leone, he now has links to Salford in Greater Manchester and also to London. So if you know where any of these faces are, make sure you get in touch using the numbers on screen. Next, a terrifying knife-point robbery on an unsuspecting student in broad daylight.
The city of Bradford, once famous for its bustling textile industry, is now better known for its delicious curries. 26-year-old Tim Booth began his working life here as a chef.
I started when I was 16. My cousin, a few years older than me, she's quite a successful chef. So I started pot washing for her when I was in school. So I've worked in like a few rosette restaurants and high-end restaurants, but also can't beat flipping some burgers, can you? And building some monstrosities, it's always nice.
But life as a chef was tougher than Tim had expected.
I've always loved cooking, and it's still like a big part of me, and it's still something I really want to do. But it got to a point where I was sick of doing 60, 70 hours a week.
So Tim decided to study radiology at Bradford University.
Well, I'd always sort of wanted to do it. My dad's a retired GP, my sister's a nurse, so I thought it was always something I was going to go into. We all just to try and get on with everybody, take care of people, make a difference to people, and make people happy.
One morning in April, Tim had been to a tutorial.
I'd just been at university. I was just delivering one of my final presentations for my degree.
He planned to take the bus home, a journey he'd made dozens of times before.
I'm waiting at the bus stop, and I just pulled my phone out and I was just checking time against the bus timetable. It was 11:15, and I remember the bus comes at 11:17, so I just put my phone away. And then two lads started coming up towards me. And they were both staring at me, so I just sort of like tried my head and I followed them as they walked past. And then when I turned back, there was just a guy stood right up in my face. And he just said, "Give me your phone." And I said, "I ain't got it." And then he said, "I've just seen you put your phone in your pocket, give me it now." And he looked down. And then I glanced down and he had a knife right up against me. I just pulled my phone out and just give him it, and then as he walked off, he went, "Cheers, lad," and then jogged to catch up with his mates, and they just, all three of them walked off up road, brazen as day, not a care in the world.
Straight away, Tim borrowed a phone from a passerby and called the police.
And I give a full description of all three lads as they were walking away up the road, and they must not have been more than 20 yards away.
But the knife point robbers were never caught. Tim believes this crime wasn't a one-off.
This must be like a regular occurrence. So to rob somebody so opportunist on spot and then just saunter away as if it were everyday business, as if that were their way of life, which it probably was. People can be really fazed by something like that, and I think that's why it's important that this person does get found. It needs to be stopped.
Well, DI Matt Walker from West Yorkshire Police joins me now. Matt, this robbery happened in the middle of the day, didn't it, in the city centre? I mean, there must be some witnesses to this crime.
I think there certainly must be. This happened at 11 o'clock in the morning on the Tuesday, on the 10th of April, right outside Bradford University on Great Horton Road, just before Ash Grove. We particularly would like to speak to the male that lent his phone to Tim to enable him to call the police that day. We think he could be a key witness.
And what about descriptions of the suspects?
Yeah, Tim did get the descriptions. He describes one of the males that walked past him before the robbery took place as a black man, about 6 foot tall, wearing his hood up and carrying two drawstring turquoise bags. There's also an e-fit of the male that held the knife. He describes him as a white male, about 5'5", of slim build. He also said he was pale, with a gaunt face and sunken eyes. He said he was wearing a waterproof grey North Face jacket.
Now, Tim had his mobile phone stolen, didn't he?
He did. It was quite a common phone, a Samsung Galaxy S6, but we're hoping that people will perhaps recognise the descriptions of the suspect and put it together with the phone around that time.
Tim was saying in the film he just wants this person stopped. How's he doing?
Yeah, he's taken it in his stride, to be fair, as much as you'd hope with something like this. But Tim's concern, as well as our own, is that you know, this was done in a really casual manner when they committed this offence. It would suggest it's not their first time. So we want to make sure that we're getting these people, because it could have happened under different circumstances. They used a knife and it could have been a much nastier offence at the end of the day.
Exactly, it could have been a lot worse, couldn't it? Matt, thank you very much. Any information, you know what to do. Rav.
Thanks, Michelle. Now it's time for the second part of the story of how detectives brought down a lucrative drug smuggling ring. In November 2014, Border Force and the National Crime Agency caught pilot Andrew Wright red-handed, smuggling 34 kilos of cocaine into Brayton Airfield, North Yorkshire. Investigators linked him financially to a man called Jamie Williams, who they knew was involved in organised crime. So they set out to study Williams's movements. They discovered he'd made lots of recent trips to Europe.
When we followed Williams's path, he goes through the Channel Tunnel, and then we see that he stops sometime in Holland, and then he moves from Holland out to Germany.
Williams's journeys almost mirrored those of pilot Andrew Wright. Detectives had cracked their system. Jamie Williams was the courier who would drive to the Netherlands to buy drugs. Meanwhile, Andrew Wright would fly to Germany, where the pair would rendezvous. Wright would then take the package and fly it back to Brayton, allowing Williams to drive home empty-handed without arousing suspicion. Once in England, they'd meet again for Williams to take back the drugs. But one piece of the puzzle was still missing.
Someone's got to organise all this. Someone has to be behind it. And I was absolutely determined to find out who they were and bring them to justice.
Painstaking analysis of phone records led the team to Mark Dowling, a London drugs kingpin. Dowling and Williams were put under surveillance, and it soon paid off.
Sometimes things take months to build, sometimes things happen very, very quickly. This happened over a period of hours. It looked as though Williams was probably going to do a drugs deal.
so the team trailing him gave chase.
As the blue lights went on, Williams sped off, discarding things from the windows.
Police caught up with Williams and arrested him. The package he'd thrown from the van turned out to be almost a kilogram of cocaine. And in Williams's house, police found more damning evidence.
There was roughly around about £100,000 in cash. There was a firearm with ammunition. There was a further 5 kilos of cocaine. There was wrappings for drugs. There was a drugs press. So basically, it was a lair for somebody who was pressing and manufacturing drugs.
Williams was taken into custody. Then, the team following Mark Dowling, the man believed to be running the operation, also struck lucky.
Because he's now lost his pilot and his specialist importer, he's now lost his courier, so we often see them going what we call hands-on themselves, because the people that they employ to be hands-on are now in jail. The West London team saw Mr. Dowling in a transaction with other men, and they caught him red-handed.
When officers searched his mother's loft, they found 12 kilos of cocaine and, crucially, a document detailing his gang's operations.
Quite often, when a drugs dealer is accounting for their activity, they will write down a ledger of who they are using in order to bring what drugs and how much it's costing them, etc.
The notes were written in code, but a famous name from a children's storybook left no doubt that Andrew Wright was involved.
Didn't really take us a long time to work out who the pilot was, because he was referred to on the document as Biggles.
If you were a bit more intelligent, you probably would have used a better code.
The document also revealed the enormous scale of the gang's drugs operation.
That piece of paper actually accounted for 268 kilos of cocaine. That is valued at around about £35 million. It's at the highest end of serious organised crime.
Andrew Biggles Wright had finally had his wings clipped and was sentenced to